ってきた。危ない。
Good evening. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce myself briefly. My name is David Carson, I'm 35 years old, and I've been a long-haul truck driver for more than 6 years. I've run most major routes across the United States, from the desert stretches of Arizona to the frozen highways of the Dakotas, but my regular runs keep me closer to the east. I know the roads of Appalachia like the back of my hand, twisting mountain passes, lonely forest corridors, roads where fog rolls in thick and low like ghosts. That's where my story takes place. It was the spring of 2021, a typical overnight run from Charleston, West Virginia down toward Knoxville, Tennessee. The run takes you through mountains, endless bends and curves, switchbacks that test your patience and your brakes. It was about 2:30 in the morning. I was wide awake, coming fresh off a rest stop, clear-headed, sober, not a drop of alcohol in my life when I'm driving. I don't take pills, don't smoke. The only vice I admit to is too much junk food at truck stops. That night, though, nothing could have prepared me. I was climbing toward a sharp curve near Great Smoky Mountains National Park when it happened. Out of nowhere, someone stepped into the road. I slammed the brakes so hard my chest hit the wheel. Tire screamed, the trailer bucked. My rig shuddered to a stop just feet away from the figure. My heart almost stopped when I recognized him. It was my younger brother, Ethan. The problem is, Ethan had been dead for nearly 10 years. He died at 18 after a long, brutal fight with leukemia. I'd buried him myself in the soccer uniform he'd always loved. And that was exactly what he was wearing, standing in front of my truck, his uniform, his hair cropped the same way, his posture so unmistakably his. I sat there shaking, gripping the wheel until my knuckles ached. I blinked hard, trying to clear the image, but when I looked again, he was gone. No footsteps. No figure in the headlights. Nothing but the winding road ahead. I gasped for air, still frozen in disbelief, when the blast of an air horn exploded behind me. Another trucker had come up on me and now roared past, cursing out his window for me blocking the road. He disappeared into the curve, his taillights glowing red like eyes before vanishing around the bend. I forced myself to breathe, wiped the sweat off my face, and rolled forward slowly. The curve was sharp, the kind where you drop speed to 30 miles per hour or risk skidding. That's when it happened. Just as I reached the bend, headlights flared from the opposite direction. Another semi barreled around the corner, too fast, weaving. Before I could even think, the two rigs collided head-on. The sound was like thunder cracking the earth. The truck that had passed me moments before was torn apart, crushed against the guardrail. His cab pitched off the road and down into a ravine. Metal shrieked. Glass exploded. Then silence, broken only by the hiss of destroyed air brakes. I sat there trembling, staring at the wreckage. If my brother's apparition hadn't stopped me, I would have been in that curve at the exact same second. It would have been me. Instead, another man had just died in my place. I called 911, hands shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone. Emergency responders arrived within 20 minutes, and miraculously, the drunk driver of the other semi survived, battered but alive. The trucker who'd passed me hadn't been so lucky. He died instantly. That night changed me. I couldn't stop thinking about Ethan. Did his spirit appear to warn me? Did he save me? Or did he trade someone else's life for mine? I couldn't shake the guilt that maybe I was never supposed to live through that night. I tried to move on, but I couldn't. The second incident. 3 weeks later, I was on another run, this time carrying lumber through the Blue Ridge Parkway near North Carolina. Beautiful in daylight. Terrifying in the dead of night. It was around 3 a.m. when the déjà vu began. Fog thickened across the ridges, and once again, my brother appeared. This time he wasn't standing in the road. He was running alongside my truck. I froze. My speed was 50, maybe more, yet there he was, keeping pace with me in the fog, his face pale, his eyes hollow, his uniform stained with dirt. He didn't look alive this time. He looked wrong. He kept turning his head toward me, his mouth moving as though trying to speak, but the words came into my ears without sound. I tightened my grip on the wheel and prayed out loud, "Please, God, not again." Then the trailer rocked. Hard. A bang came from the rear, loud enough to rattle my teeth. I thought a strap had broken loose or the load had shifted. The sound came again, knuckles pounding from inside the trailer walls. I checked my mirrors. No cars behind me. Nothing but fog. But I swore I could hear voices, dozens of them, whispering, laughing, crying, all layered over one another. I fought to keep control of the truck as the pounding grew louder, faster. The steering wheel jerked in my hands as though something was tugging it sideways. When I finally pulled into a turnout and stumbled out, my knees shaking, the night was silent again. No fog, no voices. But on the side of the trailer, scratched deep into the paint, were words I will never forget. "It was supposed to be you." I staggered back, my stomach lurching, bile in my throat. The letters were jagged, carved with something sharp, cutting right down to the steel. There was no way it could have been vandalism. I had been on the road non-stop. No one had come close enough. I drove the rest of that night in silence, too afraid to even turn on the radio, every shadow in the forest pressing against my windows like a weight. I've never been the same since those 2 nights. My brother, whatever he is now, didn't just save me. He showed me something worse, that my life may have been spared at someone else's cost. That I'm carrying a debt I can never repay. Every time I pass through those mountains, I wonder if one night the debt will come due. And if, next time, Ethan won't be there to save me. Let's continue. My name is Michael Grant, I'm 36 years old, and I've been a long-haul truck driver for nearly 15 years. My father drove before me, and I grew up idolizing him, watching the way he handled a rig like it was a second home. I knew this life wasn't easy, but I embraced it anyway. These roads became my inheritance, my battlefield, and sometimes my prison. I've seen plenty of things on America's highways, accidents, crime, breakdowns in the middle of nowhere, but I never believed in the supernatural. That changed in the fall of 2020, on a stretch of Highway 191 in Arizona, a place already infamous for its isolation, cartel activity, and accidents. The first encounter. It was around 10:30 p.m. I'd just left a roadside diner south of Chino, headed toward Tucson with a load of grain. 9 more hours of driving ahead of me, plenty of coffee in my thermos, and my best friend Kyle on speakerphone. He'd been going through a messy divorce, and I let him talk, his frustration filling the cab. Talking helped keep me awake. The night was clear, stars shining bright across the desert sky. But as I rounded a long curve where the road hugged the foothills, something pulled my attention to the right. "Hang on a sec," I told Kyle. "I'm seeing people." At first I thought maybe it was a group of hikers or migrants. Shapes, dozens of them, stood among the scrub and rocks, just off the shoulder. Men. Women. Silent. Watching. Kyle laughed. "You're imagining things, Mike. Too much caffeine." But I wasn't laughing. I slowed down instinctively, staring through the glass. There were at least 20 of them, maybe more. Pale faces, eyes glinting in my headlights, bodies utterly still as if carved out of the desert itself. "Mike, what is it?" Kyle pressed. I swallowed hard. "There are people in the brush. Just standing there. Staring at me." "Get the hell out of there," he said quickly. "Could be a trap. They'll swarm your rig, jack your load." The thought chilled me. I shifted gears, pressed harder on the accelerator, and the truck roared forward. As I passed, the figures didn't move an inch. Their heads just turned, every last one of them, tracking me with their eyes. I drove until my knuckles ached from gripping the wheel. Kyle tried to joke about it later, saying I'd probably seen scarecrows or shadows from rocks. I let him talk, but deep down I knew what I'd seen were people. Real or not, I couldn't say. The second encounter. The next day I made my delivery in Tucson. Exhausted, I spent most of the afternoon asleep in my cab, parked in the company lot. By nightfall, I headed back north toward home. I knew I'd passed that same stretch of Highway 191. I told myself I wouldn't look. I told myself I'd keep my eyes on the yellow lines, let the desert be the desert. It was around 2 a.m. when I reached the spot. My stomach tightened. My headlights carved into the dark canyon walls. And there they were. The same figures. In the same places. Exactly as before. Dozens of them, frozen in the brush, staring at me. Not one blink. Not one step. My chest went cold. I gripped the wheel, forcing myself to keep steady speed. But curiosity broke me. I turned my head for one last glance. That's when one of them, closest to the shoulder, lifted its arms slowly and waved. Not friendly. Not threatening. Just a hollow gesture. A recognition. I nearly ran my truck into the guardrail. My heart slammed in my chest as I sped away. The truth. When dawn came, I called Kyle and told him what I'd seen again. He went quiet, then asked me to tell him the exact mile marker. I gave it to him. He said he'd call back. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. His voice was different, low, unsettled. Mike. I looked it up. That stretch of 191, you know what happened there last year? Border Patrol found mass graves in the foothills. Migrants. Dozens of bodies. Men, women, even kids. Dumped by smugglers. Buried shallow. The news says at least 50 people. I swore at him, demanded to know if he was screwing with me. He wasn't. He texted me links, articles, photos. I didn't want to open them, but I did. He wasn't lying. And the dates matched. Just months before. The haunting. Ever since then, I can't drive through that area without feeling eyes on me. I don't listen to music there anymore. I don't talk on the phone. I just hold the wheel, stare straight ahead, and feel them lining the road. The worst part? Sometimes I think I hear them. Not outside, but inside the cab. Soft voices, whispers just beneath the hum of the engine. A man muttering in Spanish. A woman crying. A child saying, "Are you Dame? Help me." One night, weeks later, I parked at a rest stop 40 miles north of that cursed stretch. I killed the engine, closed the curtains, and tried to sleep. Around 3 a.m., the sound of footsteps circled my cab. Gravel crunching, slow and deliberate. I froze. Reached for the knife I keep under my pillow. The footsteps stopped at my door. Knuckles rapped 3 times on the metal. Not frantic. Just steady. I pulled the curtain back, heart in my throat. Nobody there. But in the dust on the glass, pressed clear as day, was the print of a hand. Small. Like a child's. Reflection. I don't tell this story lightly. Some people laugh. Others shake their heads. But I know what I saw. Twice. And I know what I heard. I think about those people every time I drive. Maybe they weren't looking at me. Maybe they were looking through me, pleading with anyone who would see them. Maybe their souls never made it out of that desert. But the question that eats at me most is, why me? Why did I see them when hundreds of other truckers pass through every night? I don't have an answer. All I know is that on Highway 191, the dead still watch. And sometimes, they knock. Let's continue. I'd like to share with you a story I experienced quite some time ago. It left a deep impression on me, and even now I'm still shaken by it. I hope you'll enjoy it and perhaps share it on your channel. My name is Thomas Briggs, I'm 44 years old, and I've been a truck driver for half my life. My father drove before me, and I grew up chasing the smell of diesel and the sound of highway engines. Over the years, I've made friends all across the country, men I trust with my life, men whose families I know almost as well as my own. This story involves one of those men, and something I can still barely process. It happened in 2019, at a rest stop off Interstate 70 in Colorado, a place where truckers often pulled over to grab a meal, shower, or catch a few hours of sleep. I'd parked my rig near the back of the lot around 10 p.m., planning to stretch my legs and grab coffee before pushing through the night. As I walked toward the diner, I noticed her. A woman stood between two parked semis, barely lit by the yellow floodlights. Her posture struck me, still, stiff, like she'd been waiting there for hours. When I looked closer, recognition hit me hard. It was Linda, the wife of my old friend and fellow trucker, Gary Matthews. I hadn't seen Gary in years. He'd dropped out of the circuit for a while, no one knew why. But here was his wife, clear as day. I smiled, lifted a hand, and said, "Linda?" "Hey, it's Tom. Gary's buddy from back in '08. We met at that company party in Kansas City." She didn't smile. She didn't even blink. She just tilted her head slightly, watching me with eyes that looked wrong. Glazed. Cold. I felt a chill, but I pressed on. "You waiting for Gary? He's here." She gave the faintest nod. Something about her silence unnerved me, but I forced a smile and said, "All right, I'll let him know you're out here." I hurried toward the diner. Inside, I scanned the room until I saw him. Gary, older, heavier, but unmistakably him, was just stepping out of the restroom. I called his name. His face lit up when he saw me. We shook hands, clapped shoulders, shared the kind of grin only old friends can. Then I told him, "Gary, you're not gonna believe this, Linda's outside, waiting by your truck." I almost didn't recognize her. She looked tired, but it's definitely her. The change in him was instant. His smile collapsed. His eyes went glassy, his hands trembling. "No," he whispered. "That's not possible." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I just saw her." Gary pulled out his phone with shaking fingers and dialed. His face went white as chalk. He dropped into a chair, sobbing. "She's gone," he choked out. "Linda, she died tonight. Hospice just called me. Cancer took her." The diner went silent. Other truckers looked over, confused. My body locked up, my mind refusing the words. I stammered, "Gary. I just saw her. Between the trucks. Standing there." "No," he said, gripping the table so hard his knuckles bled white. "You didn't. You couldn't have. But I had." I tried to convince myself I'd made a mistake, that grief had blurred his timing, but Gary's tears told me otherwise. Still trembling, he demanded, "Where? Where did you see her?" I didn't want to tell him. I wanted to keep it buried. But he begged. So I said it. Between those two trucks near the edge of the lot. Gary bolted. A few of us followed, calling his name. We reached his rig. There was no one there. The space between the trucks was empty, silent, flooded with harsh yellow light. Gary fell to his knees, sobbing into his hands. I knelt beside him, useless, my own chest aching with a fear I couldn't explain. I swear on everything, I had seen her. And I swear she'd been waiting for something. The aftermath. I offered to cover Gary's delivery. He was in no state to drive. As I transferred his cargo into my empty trailer, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every step, every chain clink, every hiss of air brakes echoed too loud in the night. On the road, the paranoia grew worse. I kept checking my mirrors. At first I told myself it was habit. But then I saw it. A shape. In the side mirror, for a second, I glimpsed a woman's face in the passenger seat. Pale. Still. Watching. I swerved, heart in my throat. The seat was empty. But the mirror didn't lie. The rest of that drive was torment. Every reflective surface, the mirrors, the chrome edges of the dashboard, even the black sheen of the windshield at night, seemed to hint at her. A pale outline, the curve of a jaw, the hollow of her eyes. By dawn, I delivered the load, exhausted and broken. I never told Gary about what followed. He'd lost enough. But to this day, when I pull into a rest stop, I scan the shadows between trucks. I expect to see her again, waiting, silent, her eyes cold and glassy. And I pray to God that next time, she isn't waiting for me. Let's continue. Hello Prater, before I tell you my story, I'd like to ask you not to mention my name, mostly for safety reasons. You'll understand why once I share what happened to me. I'm a truck driver, or transporter, whatever you want to call it. I used to think I was one of the few who had never experienced anything paranormal on the road, aside from the usual scares caused by criminal gangs, but never anything unexplainable. Honestly, I even had a hard time believing the stories some of my colleagues told. That's how skeptical I was. I had never seen anything strange or paranormal, but as they say never. That night, I was on my usual route. It was past midnight when I was driving along a road I take every week. I was listening to music, eating some snacks, everything calm, nothing out of the ordinary. But suddenly, in the distance, I noticed someone walking along the side of the road. I slowed down a bit. We were practically surrounded by wilderness, still about 2 hours from the next city. These roads are dangerous, some are controlled by organized crime, and it's never safe to drive there at night, let alone walk, especially if you're a woman. As I got closer, I realized it was indeed a young woman. She wore a torn dress, her hair was loose and messy. I stopped to offer help. I didn't want to frighten her, but I couldn't just leave her there alone. On that road, if I didn't help, something worse could happen to her. I pulled over and asked if she was all right. She stopped walking, turned to look at me with a blank stare, and I noticed bruises on her face. She didn't reply. I thought maybe she had been kidnapped and released, or perhaps she had escaped. I told her to get in the truck quickly, fearing someone might be following her. She didn't hesitate and climbed in, sitting in the passenger seat. I honestly didn't know what to do. If I called the police, they might hand her back to whoever had hurt her. In Mexico, sometimes you don't know who's good and who's bad. I only wanted to take her somewhere safe. So, I kept asking her where she lived, her name, or if she knew a family member's number. But every time, she just stared at me without saying a word. She looked like she was in shock. I decided to drive her to the next city and take her to a hospital. I even called my wife to tell her what was happening. The first thing she told me was to make sure no one was following me. She feared I might get hurt for helping. But I assured her no one was behind us. I kept checking. My wife can testify to what happened that night, and I'm glad I thought to call her. During the whole trip, the young woman didn't speak. She sat with her arms over her legs, staring blankly ahead. I offered her food, but she didn't respond. She seemed traumatized. But before we reached the city, she suddenly opened the truck door. I stopped immediately, worried she might fall, but the moment I braked, she jumped out and ran into the woods. I searched for her, but it was like she vanished among the trees. I couldn't find her. I called my wife again and asked if I should report it to the police, but she told me not to. They might be connected, or even blame me. So, I just left, praying that someone else would find her and help her. I finished that trip, and about 3 days later, while I was home scrolling through social media, I saw a news page post a missing person alert. It was her. All the details matched. No doubt it was the same woman. But the post said she had been missing for more than 2 weeks, while I had seen her just days earlier. I immediately called the number listed and reached her mother. Nervously, I told her everything, including the exact kilometer where I last saw her running into the woods. But the woman told me I must be mistaken. She said it couldn't have been her daughter because 2 days earlier, authorities had returned her remains. According to forensics, she had been killed the very same day she disappeared, 2 weeks ago. I couldn't believe it. I had just seen her days before. I insisted I was sure. She had a very distinct birthmark on her left leg, and the girl I helped had the same mark. But her mother cried and repeated that it was impossible. DNA tests confirmed it was her daughter. She said they had found her body in an abandoned truck in a wooded area with other women's remains. She couldn't say more because she was being threatened. She begged me not to talk about it again, but thanked me for calling. After I hung up, I broke down crying. My wife was with me and had heard everything through the speakerphone. She hugged me silently, with tears in her eyes too. I kept telling her over and over that it was the same girl, and my wife told me she believed me. It made me deeply sad. Now I don't know if what I saw was her spirit wandering those woods, if I really had a ghost sitting in my passenger seat that night. Hard as it is to believe, ever since then, every Sunday at church my wife and I light a candle for her and pray for her soul. Even when I'm away on trips, my wife does it for me. I just hope that she's finally at peace, resting in a better place. Good night. These horror tales remind us that life is fragile, unpredictable, and full of unseen dangers. In our daily lives, stay alert, trust your instincts, and value the time with loved ones. Fear teaches caution, but also gratitude. Protect yourself, cherish connections, and never ignore the signs around you.